have, and then also if you would please share the land acknowledgement with us. And
can you put it in the chat again? If you join late, it's not there anymore.
okay, let's see.
Thanks, Sanji.
Mm-hmm. Maricela, did you want to go ahead and get us started?
Oh, sorry, I didn't know I was, oh, I guess my name is next to it. Sure, let's see. So, do you want me just to
Call the meeting to order, do a welcome, acknowledge the council members, and then the land acknowledgement.
Okay. So should we just like do attendance first? Is it doing attendance? Do I do that?
Yes, so you are going to call the meeting officially to order for the youth committee, and then acknowledge the council members that are present. And then after that, you can do the land acknowledgement, or you can do the land acknowledgement first and then do attendance.
Okay, I'll just read the land acknowledgement. I'd like to acknowledge the many tribes and bands who call Oregon their ancestral territory and honor the ongoing relationships between the land, plants, animals, and people indigenous to this place we now call home. We recognize the continued sovereignty of the 9 federal recognized tribes who have ties to this place and the subsequent bands within those tribes, and thank them for their continuing to teach us how for attendance. I think we should just, because this list here just has all of the council members.
So it would just be the youth committee member, which are the 4 young ladies.
Oh, okay. Okay, I wasn't sure who these other people were. Okay, and so I already know us. I see that Deanna's here, Isa2's here, and the only person we're missing is what is her name? Destiny. Thank you.
Great. Would you like to do any welcoming open words for those guests that we have present? And introduce yourself. Well, I will do that. Again, good morning, everyone. Thank you all for joining us today. This is the Oregon Youth Development Council Youth Committee. And my name is Sanji Moore. I'm the Racial and Ethnic Disparities Coordinator for the Youth Development Division and also the staff liaison for the Youth Committee. I would like to take the opportunity to introduce our Youth Committee members. You have met Maricela Ortega, who is our chair. We also have Deanna Rojas, who is a member present, and Isa Chu Berry, who is a member present. Young ladies, would you all like to just say hello and introduce yourselves, or just say good morning?
Yeah. Hi there. Good morning. Buenos dias. Like they mentioned, my name is Diana Rojas, she, her pronoun, and I think I'm coming up on my 2 year. I'm a youth member here. Thank you.
Hello, good morning, everyone. My name is Isa Chu, and I've been with the Youth Council for about 2 years now as well. Good to meet you all, and thanks for being here.
Perfect. Thank you all.
Quick introduction.
And I'm sorry.
I was just going to introduce myself.
Yes,
I think you kind of did it. I just wanted to say pronouns. Sorry, y'all. I have 2 deadlines today. I'm the development manager at Verde, and being the only fundraiser is hard. And so today is a busy day. Yeah.
We definitely understand. And so for those who have not had the opportunity to view our agenda on public notice or online, I do not have screen sharing capabilities, so I cannot share the agenda with you, but I put it in the chat. I'm going to go over it briefly so that everyone will kind of know the order of our meeting this morning. Of course, we had the welcome and land acknowledgement by Maricela. We are about to proceed into a discussion about the direction of the Youth Committee and how the Youth Development Council and the Youth Development Division can re-engage our young adult members. That will be facilitated by myself. After that, we'll have an open discussion, followed by a director's report and a update on the Youth Development Council and Youth Development Division Planning Retreat by the Youth Development Director, Brian Detman, and approximately 12:30, and these are our estimated times. We may move a little bit quicker than the times noted. We will discuss our next steps and open the floor or the meeting for any public comments. And after that, we will adjourn. So I will begin. Thank you. Melissa, I imagine, is sharing her screen. Thank you very much, Melissa, our executive assistant for the Youth Development Council. And so one big vision and direction that our director, Brian Detman, and myself, I'm a strong advocate and champion for, is that we figure out a way to amplify the voices of the youth that we serve. We are the Youth Development Division, and so our work focuses around young people in Oregon, and we want to make them a central voice in the work that we do. And because of the Title II program that we receive some of our grant funds from, we have to have a certain component of our council, which also serves as our state advisory group for the purposes of our Title II award. And so a certain composition of the Youth Development Council has to be made up of young adults. And the new requirement is that they must be 28 at the time of their appointment, 28 or younger. And so the 4 young ladies that are currently our young adult youth members serve in that capacity. And we've been trying to determine if we want to continue to have a quote unquote youth committee, because it's not a requirement that we have a committee called a youth committee. And we want to determine if this is the best avenue to allow the focus and the work of the young adults and the young people that we serve, and it's the most efficient way. We've talked about potentially having the youth committee as an ad hoc committee. Of course, we also want to amplify the young voices that we work with to let them know that their voices are equally as important as all of our youth development council members, and also to make sure that they know that they're at the table, their voice is an equal contributing voice, and that their ideas and their work and their suggestions are very, very important. And one thing that we learned at a recent conference about youth engagement is that a slogan that we've kind of adopted in some part, which is nothing about us without us, which means that you can't make decisions about a group of people without including them in the conversation and without them being an equal decider in their own destiny. And so we've just been kind of engaging with the young ladies. I've had the opportunity to speak with 3 of the 4 of them about how they envision the youth members and the young adult members of the council moving forward in the work that we do. And of course, the pandemic put a damper on a lot of the work that we began to envision and plan last year. We were actually going to be planning a summit for the summer or early fall of 2020. And of course, because of the pandemic, that got put on pause. So kind of slowed down the momentum of the work that we were doing with the young ladies. And the question now is, what is the direction moving forward? And I have been reassigned in the fall of last year to be the staff liaison for the council. And some things that I have discussed with Brian and my direct supervisor, Anya Sakina, who couldn't be with us today, she's the juvenile crime prevention manager, is that we hope to provide opportunities for the young people to have a safe space where they feel they are acclimated with the work that the Youth Development Council and the Youth Development Division is doing, so that it can be equitably presented to them, and also give them the opportunity to ask questions to facilitate any information that might not be clear to them. And also, one thing that I really hope to be able to do is to create mentorship opportunities between our younger members and our more seasoned, experienced members. And so those are some of the conversations that we have. And I've had the opportunity to speak with the ladies, and I will allow them to share some of the conversations that they shared with me about their concerns or their ideas about the focus of the work that the young adult members do. And then also any suggestions that they have presented to me about how we may be able to better engage. And one thing that we are also about to embark upon is that we are in the process of potentially recruiting more young people under the age of 28 to be a part of the council. And so we want to figure out how to reach potential new council members. That's also a conversation that is ongoing. So I will open up and allow the young ladies to share some of the thoughts if they can recall. If not, I will kind of facilitate and briefly refresh you all's memory about some of the things that you all suggested to me on how to better engage young people and how to make young people feel like they're valued in the decisions that are directly affecting them. Anyone want to share first?
if you all don't mind, I can go, Marisela and Isa too. So we've been here, like I mentioned, like we're going on 2 years, right? Big part of our like second year, we couldn't really partake in a lot because COVID just really hit us. And so it disrupted all of our like processes and plans and goals and whatnot. But a lot of us have some sort of history, right, with it, like how the systems have affected us. I'm really excited because I think I'm like now going into like this young professional or young adult professional. And a lot of what I've learned and I've encountered has been through like my own work and just creating my own path. But I have also had great mentors along the way, I would say, that have really helped nurture who I am and who I'm becoming. And so I'm really excited to be able to now help, like Sanji mentioned about mentorship, to be able to now like lend a hand and say, this is what I've learned. This is how I've managed this very white world as a woman of color, as a Latina, as a Chicana, as a Mexican American, with very complex and multiple identities and whatnot, intersecting identities. So I'm really excited to begin planning this alongside Marisela and Isa too, because they too have very great ideas, and I think we're always able to like work with each other and feed off of each other and add to our ideas. So I just wanted to open that up and say, like, I'm really excited to be able to help potentially be mentored while mentoring other folks. Because I think my very first year within YDC, I feel like I really grew as a person. I began to even like love and accept myself and how I showed up and how I led because of the great mentors that were already there. So yeah, I just wanted to open up with that, and then I'll let them go and then I can jump in again.
Thank you very much, Diana. We really appreciate you sharing that and beginning the conversation. Would anyone else like to chime in with their thoughts?
I can go now. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So good to see everyone.
You too.
So, yeah, thank you. So I think, Diana, you've said a lot of it, right? I think, just starting from the good things that the YDD has brought for us, I feel like as a young person that came to that space, it was so good to learn from the many experienced people that were in the room who helped us understand. Like most of the times I personally know I came in with my stories of what I've seen, my experience, and also the experience of the youth that I worked with. But in the room, there was a lot of adults who understood the policy and who helped connect our stories to how we can push and build policy to make impact long-term change. So that was very, very helpful. So, everything Diana says 100% is what I want to say. In terms of ways that we can better engage youth in the Youth Council, I think, I've had this conversation with both Sonia and Brian. I think definitely COVID had a hit, right? Before COVID, we were really starting to get engaged because we were given feedback and the team was receiving that feedback and learning to engage us in a way that, will get us to be more involved. But then COVID happened and, Zoom meetings, things are not always good with online sometimes. But one thing that I think will be very good is when we bring youth to the Youth Council, really there's this orientation that we have with all the council members when we start. Everybody comes together in the same room and we have a training. What I think will be very helpful is having a separate training for the youth members, right? Having a separate training because the experiences of the people in the room, most of the people in the council are people with 20, 30 years of experience of, making this change, of writing policies and impacting all of these things. So they really, this is something they do and talk every day. And I personally felt like there were times when I didn't understand how to translate the stories or the experience that I saw into policy talk. and really having those conversations or training for the youth in a separate session, I think helps prepare us better when we come to those meetings to understand this is the vision and goal. This is how, this is what we're trying to feed into. How do we build that story into that? How do we create the data? How do we connect all those things into building a policy? Will be a helpful thing to do for the youth members. So that's one suggestion. Another thing is when I think Sonia mentioned that the youth council is not really a requirement for the council. It's just something that, with your leadership, you all believe that, if we're talking about youth, it's important that we bring youth voices to the table. And I believe in that. I, support that. I think it's the right thing to do. And I think it's something we should be doing more. I think one thing that might be helpful, and we started this before, was that we thought it will be good to have some form of goals outlined for the youth council through the year, to say, okay, this year we want to have, for example, we wanted to have a conference where we bring together youth from all the different organizations that we fund, right? And bring them together and talk about some of these issues. This is a way that, the youth council, I feel like it was something we were all passionate and excited about to do, and something that we knew we could do. We all said, I know I can get the African immigrant and refugee youth to come, then I can get this youth, Marcella can get this youth, we can partner. And in some way, it's both ways, right? We also are learning how to partner with our communities and bring people together for this goal, but also like it's good for those communities as well and those organizations, because they get to be there and get to bring their ideas. We are representing the youth, but we really cannot speak sometimes for all of the youth, right? Because every experience is different. My experience as an immigrant is very different from somebody who is a refugee. It's all very different. So I think having those outlines will help the youth council to know where we really fit in. I feel there were times when I didn't really understand where we fit into the bigger picture, or what we could really contribute. Something that's, I don't know how my colleagues feel, but there are times when I really want to see things that I can feel and touch in some way, right? But I know policy work is different. It takes time, right? But things like that, where we set goals and have those things, will help us feel like that we're contributing and that we're engaging. There was a conference that we had one time. There was a conference we had. I can remember the title of the conference right now, with the YDD, and we had all the speakers come, and the youth, we moderated a panel with other youth members. And I think that was the time I felt most engaged with the council, right? Because I was able to moderate that panel, have a conversation, and be able to bring those voices to the forefront. And I think all of that came as a result of the feedback we were given to the previous team on how best to engage. So those two things. And then another thing is, I think that was very helpful during this council. We had a lot of opportunities to represent the council as youth members out in DC, in conferences, CJJ conferences in DC and out here in Washington. And it was really good, right? Because we got to be with other youth who is similar like us, who are doing things in their own states and communities, and really learning what they were doing and the impact. And it was as a result of that I saw that what some of those states were doing for their youth council members, they really, even though it was part of the bigger council, it was really a separate entity in some way, right? A separate entity in the sense it was, they provided all the resources that they knew the youth needed more than the adults in the space, right? So back to what I'm saying. So really learning, and there were times when I was like, we need to learn from this youth, how do we hear what they're doing and replicate, bring that sample here. And maybe as, staff members of the YDD, that might be something, if we've not done this before, if it is something new that we're building, how do we, pick up the phone and call like the Washington, youth council and say, what do you do best? What type of youth are you recruiting into your youth council? What is the timeline? What is the goals and all of that? And we can learn from that. We don't have to start something new or struggle with it, but we can learn from really successful states that are doing these things already. So I think just to summarize what I said, 3 things is like really have a separate orientation for the youth members, where they learn how to connect their stories to policy work will be good. Number 2, create some sort of tangible goals for the youth council where they feel like they have something to work on, you know, like a conference or a visit to, you know, all these youth prisons that sometimes the youth YDD goes to and all of that, or part of the process of funding grants. How do we, when we go to these things, how do we as youth council members get to connect with the youth? You know, how do we have these organizations bring maybe 3-5 youth into the room where we connect with them and we bring those voices back to the council will be helpful. And number 3, set some form of process where we learn from other states that are doing a good job in engaging their youth councils. What have they done best that we can also replicate here and do good? So I think those are my 3 main ideas that I have for now. If I think about something, I'll go back on. Thank you.
I was muted. Thank you very much, Isatu. Definitely appreciate your perspective and the insight that you offered, and being able to express some very, very excellent suggestions and things for us to consider. One question I'll put out 2. And the first is, do you all think that we need to have this segment of the Youth Development Council called a youth committee? One thing that we are potentially proposing is that this become an ad hoc committee, which is as needed, as Isatu mentioned, when there is a project or when there is something that you all take ownership of, or when there is a youth summit that we're planning, that the young adult members of the Youth Development Council would convene in order to plan and execute that specific project. Or do you all think we should continue in the spirit of trying to have, you know, quarterly, every other month, monthly, some time cycle of a continuous ongoing youth committee? So that's one question. Do we need a youth committee, or should this be an as needed group, or coming together when the youth or the young adults of the council are doing a specific task? And then the second question I have, Maricela mentioned, you know, that she is very, and all of you are, I know that each of you has, from my trying to build relationships individually with you all, that you all each have, you know, just like we all do, life experiences and your life journeys are happening real time. And, you know, one thing I know is that with time comes the ability to maybe be able to juggle or handle things, or deal with certain life circumstances a little bit differently than you did, you know, when you were in your 20s. And so one question that I have is, what do you need from us, and what advice do you give to the young person who's trying to navigate being a youth council member, being a mother, being a full-time employee, being a student, in addition to trying to do this overwhelmingly important role for the state of Oregon? What advice do you give the next young person, and what do you need individually for us to kind of help you navigate through that as you you know, learn and grow in your own individual journey? So 2 questions. First, should we have a youth committee? And second, as a young adult, what do you need to help us through the process, and what advice do you give to the young adult who may come after you in how to, you know, multitask and juggle all of these important responsibilities?
I can speak to that a little bit. I just want to say that the engagement of youth on the council has varied a lot during my time here, where I think it's more than just inviting youth to the table. It's making sure that they're prepared for the meetings and that they understand the logistics of the meetings. And I don't think that that really happened before Serena. And so on top of COVID, it's also like we were dealing with the ED transition, which is, you know, changes some things. And then Sanji coming on board. And so I think that it is necessary for youth council members to get together outside of our regular quarterly meetings. Before, we used to treat those as training so that we didn't have to deal with like the formality of an actual council meeting. And I think that was very helpful to keep us engaged, and just to, like, if we had questions that we didn't feel comfortable asking the entire council, that was our opportunity. And I think Serena was really great about, giving us that space. And so I definitely think that although it doesn't necessarily need to be like youth subcommittee, like we need to have some sort of space to connect with each other. And on top of just being youth, I think that the reason why we participate in the council is because we have a lot of experience within multiple different sectors of youth serving programs and state agencies. And so I think that those views are really unique to the council, and I think that we can bring a lot. But we just need, I think for youth coming in, I think the onboarding should be a little bit different than what I've experienced. And I think Isatu and Deanna can maybe talk a little bit more, since they came on a little bit later, maybe it had changed a bit. But I felt like the onboarding, it just wasn't as clear as I would like it to be. And there wasn't enough support then. That was when Iris was the ED, and that was quite a while ago. But yeah, so personally, I think that we should continue to have some sort of meeting, whether that be subcommittee meeting or just like a training. And then in terms of new youth coming on, I think that space, by having that extra space for youth committee members, they would feel more engaged and more apt to ask questions and to learn more about the council and what we're doing here.
Thank you very much, Maricela. Excellent insight that you provided. Greatly appreciated. Anyone else like to address either? It's kind of 3 questions that I asked, but 2.5 questions. Anyone else like to take a response?
I can go. The first question is, do we need, to still have a youth council? I think we need to have a youth council, right? It's a good thing that we're doing. It's the way to make change, right? You need to make change by having the people involved. And I think your idea of like, should we have like a separate small group where like the youth just come together when it's time to do like a, conference, a youth conference. I don't know if that really changes anything, as long as the youth members are already part of the council, if they still have to, it's still like I feel like it's still the same dynamic as we have right now, right? It still wouldn't, even if that happens, I feel like the recommendations or the problems that we're having right now will still be there if they're not addressed, right? So I think that's something probably the council can discuss how they want to do that, but I don't really think it does a big change into the contribution of the youth or what the space is going to look like. In terms of like, what was the second question again?
What do you all need from us to help kind of assist you in navigating where you currently are in your life to be able to, manage the different responsibilities or life circumstances that you're having as an individual adult? And then, the second part of that is, what advice would you give your peer about how to navigate and manage multiple responsibilities successfully?
Okay, I will start with the last question. I think if I had to do this back again, maybe one thing that I should have been more proactive with in the council is maybe finding a mentor within the council. So someone who, there was a lot of people that I'm very interested in youth justice and juvenile justice and all that. There were people within the council who were lawyers and did this work and, you know, wrote some of these policies, maybe reaching out to those people and saying, you know, I come to these meetings, I know my stories, I know the experiences, but how do you help me try to think from a policy perspective? Because at the end of the day, that's the end goal, right? That's what we do in the council, is trying to impact those long-term changes. So maybe that's what I should have done to be proactive. I didn't do that. And maybe it's not something every youth will be comfortable doing. So maybe the council thinks about creating those type of relationships where, you know, if we're having 5 youth members, how do we connect them to a mentor within the council, you know, ask them what their interests are, and you have somebody within the council check in with them maybe before meetings and say, what do you think? Do you have a question? So that's an advice I would give to somebody who was going to join. And another way I think maybe the ideas of youth councils are always I'm very passionate about it, because I did this work when I worked at ERCO. You know, we had the youth department was the biggest at ERCO. It's the biggest, also it's the one that brings us most money, but we never had a youth council. It was, you know, most of the people in our programs were very young, of course, the youth advocates, but there was a time I said, you know, we need to have a youth council. We need to have middle and high school students come and have a council and build programs and tell us what the problems are. You know, most of us have lived this, but let's hear from them. And what I've learned in that process is youth are very capable if they're given the right resources and if they are trained on what is expected of them. That was my experience. Some of these kids, you know, some who spoke a little bit English, you know, some who were new to the country, they knew their problems, right? They were able to talk that and translate that and help us build. That was how we actually built a model for the youth council, that we requested funding from the state and actually got funding. It was their ideas that we built, right? So I think, you know, back what I'm saying, really building that form of resources for youth, we can see more productivity. So that's what I will say. And in terms of how the councils can support us, I think, you know, I honestly will say all the previous people and the new leadership has been very supportive of checking in us and supporting us, and knowing that we are also part of the youth that you serve, right? We are also, you know, people that we are part of the council, but we're people you serve, and, you know, you do that. And I think you reach out and make connections for us and check in and help us in other parts of our life. And that has been my experience with the previous leadership and the new leadership. So I think that's going well, and I think it should continue that way.
Excellent. Thank you, Aisha, too. Diana, would you like to chime in on the conversation?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks to my partners, Maricela and Isa too. I totally agree and support their statements, and I feel very similar. I know Maricela and Isa too both touched on onboarding, and so I totally agree. I know we talked about this and I totally forgot. Last year, I think Serena was still around when we started talking about like onboarding and perhaps some sort of training. Most of us have not been in spaces like this. So, you know, joining YDC was like our very first encounter. And there are things that happen, like I second that, or I motion. And like a lot of us were like, how do we interact? Like, where do we really fit? What is this, right? So it was all very new. And I think there were times where we didn't speak up because we didn't really understand how the processes worked, just based on like conversations that we've had on our own and, you know, during conferences and stuff. Sorry, I do not mean to put words in your mouth, so correct me if I'm wrong, but I remember like many times it felt odd. We didn't really understand the processes. So I think something more clear, what are expectations, boundaries, goals. Yeah, I know at least for me, it was something like super exciting. I'm like, wow, how cool. Like my whole life trajectory continues to change with education and all these other opportunities. But it would have been really nice to have more structured training and like mentoring or something, like Isatu was saying. And then about having, should it be a group or an add-on? I also agree. I think meeting more than just every 3 months. I know this last few months since the beginning of the pandemic, it's been different. And So I wouldn't know how to answer the second question about what kind of advice. This is the very first pandemic I go through in my life, like adult life, that I know of. And this is the very first time that I'm encountering a lot of the issues that we're facing as a country. So if you all have advice for me, please share, because I don't know. I think, yeah, I don't know. The only advice that I could give is about, like, when we do have the meetings, speak up and share your truth. There's nothing wrong with saying and speaking your truth, and how these systems have impacted you in your life. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Diana. Very, very profound thoughts that you shared. And so one thing that I'm seeing a consistent theme of is the fact that the orientation process of a new council member, especially particularly a young person, needs to be tailored to the needs of someone who may not be as familiar with the role and responsibility that they are about to take on. I think that another common theme is that young people need something to take ownership of in order to feel like their voices are heard and that they are a part of the process. They need to have something tangible that they can do and contribute to. And then I think the idea that I shared about developing a potential mentorship between the younger members and the more seasoned members of our council is something that has seemed to have good reception in this meeting. So I hope that we can definitely pursue that. And also the opportunity to create that safe space for young people to be able to ask questions and have the preparation for a full council meeting done in a way that's equitable to them and that allows them the space to just get a clear understanding of what the agenda items are and what will be covered in a full council meeting, ask questions, get clarity, and just feel prepared for a full council meeting. And then I think another theme that I've heard is allowing us to be more present with youth across the state and the work that we do, and engaging them and, you know, being more interactive. And of course, right now, that seems like an oxymoron, but, you know, figuring out a way, even in the pandemic, you know, we don't know what is going to happen by the summer or, you know, next year, or how long the status quo will be status quo, like how long we will continue to have to meet and interact and plan and, you know, work in a virtual reality. But if this in fact is going to continue for a while, we have to adapt and adjust and figure out a way to do the things that we desire and achieve our goals through the pandemic, through doing it virtually, in a modified manner until we can potentially engage in person and get back to what used to be our life before the Twilight Zone came. So another thing I would ask is, what are your thoughts about how to recruit potential young adult members on the council, and who would you like to see as your counterparts on the council?
Sorry, so we both went on mute. I'll share. Okay. During, I think 2 years ago, when I first graduated and all, I was working in Woodburn, and I began this partnership with McLaren, which is a youth correctional facility located in Woodburn. That partnership is still going with the previous employer, and so it's cool to see that continue. And I met great individuals, took a lot of educational workshops in. We did this for over 6 months, and I would love to see incarcerated youth's voices being represented here. It also, yeah, so just that. I would love to see, you know, it doesn't just have to be for McLaren, but I advocate for McLaren because that's where I worked with and met great folks.
Diana, like, I don't know, we're here. Like, I'm definitely 100%, 200, 300% in agreement with you. I think that adjudicated youth bring, especially in the juvenile crime prevention and the juvenile delinquency aspect of our work and the prevention aspect of our work and intervention, of course, would present a tremendous opportunity. Of course, that is one that would become more complicated because of the dynamic of someone who is in a facility currently. But I think that what better way to reach a population that we're trying to intercept and that we're also trying to habilitate, so that when they re-enter society, we give them the maximum opportunity and possibility to be successful after they leave. And so I think that's a brilliant idea, and I definitely am putting a mental imaginary pin to that and hope that we can continue to pursue that. So thank you for sharing that. And we didn't talk about that before, so we're here. Anyone else? How do we recruit new young adults to the council, and who would you like to see as your peer or your counterpart on the council?
One thing I think in terms of recruiting you to the council, I was thinking like we can use, because a lot of the youth we serve and a lot of the voices we want present at this table are organizations that we already fund, right? We work with these organizations, they have youth leaders. So I think what will be a good way maybe is like reaching out to some of these organizations and saying, we have a youth council, we want a youth member to represent the council. I feel like these youth will bring the voices of the organizations they represent, but also the communities they represent. And I think this will be even an easier way because we already have this relationship with these organizations, and they can pick the youth within the organizations that they think are a good representation of the communities that they serve. So that's, if I was doing this job, that's how I will recruit you to the council. I know I was recruited because I worked with ERCO, I was a youth advocate, was a youth program coordinator, and had a good relationship with a lot of the immigrant and refugee communities here and knew the struggles, and that's how, you know, I was in the council. So I think that will be a way. In terms of what type of youth I would like to see in the council, you know, definitely, you know, I'm, you know, the youth from the communities of immigrant and refugee kids, the kids, you know, who we try to serve, engagement, prevention, intervention. That's everything that these kids go through, right? For these kids, they are facing all of it at the same time, right? When they come here to this new place that is home for them and that they pay taxes to, and that we, you know, the youth, you know, YDD work for, and the struggles of these kids are real and they're hard, and it's hard for people who've not walked in their shoes to understand. You know, when I walked in those schools and did some of that work and had to face teachers who didn't understand some of the struggles of these kids, you understood that a lot of it, these teachers didn't even know, you know, like it's basic things that you're like, you should know, but you're like, this was something these teachers didn't even do it intentionally. They just didn't know how to engage a youth that wears a hijab, or a kid that comes from a different home, or a kid who it's Ramadan and he or she is fasting and has to go do a prayer. They just don't know, right? How to call the parent and say this is happening. So having those youth in that table helps us to build programs and policies that help them to, navigate the new school system and the new home and the new society. So I think we definitely need to bring those tables, and we need to bring those youth to that table, and also the experience of, that's all Black kids, right? But also like those African immigrant and refugee kids that I'm talking about. But there's also, our African American brothers here and sisters who have different experiences that an immigrant and refugee from another part of the world has. So bringing those perspectives to the table also will be good. I think overall we just need, in as much as we probably, it'll be great if we need to bring, youths that have all these experiences that we should work to, solve and do a better job in bringing those voices to the table will be, it's the way to go. And sometimes we may not be able to bring every voice to the table, but then that's where we use the youth that we work with to help us get to those voices that we cannot get to. So that's all I wanted to say.
Sanji, you're muted.
Thank you. Maricela, would you like to add anything to that?
Yeah, so just I agree with everything that Diana and IC2 mentioned. We had been in the works of recruiting a youth from Oak Creek, which is the girls' detention center. And that didn't go through, but I think it's so monumental to make sure that we have those voices at the table, because nobody can speak to re-engagement as much as they can. And just understanding what could have worked for them, or what did work and what kept them out of, those situations. But on top of that, I think it's really important that we see some advocates from rural areas, because we don't have that currently. And I think their perspective is totally different from ours. And then just to talk a little bit about kind of, Isa2 mentioned she was recruited from ERCO. I was actually recruited from Department of Human Services. I went through the subsidy and Chafee program there. And so I also think that that's a good way to recruit youth, because those youth have most likely experienced all of these different systems and can really speak to those. And for me, I think what helped me in my younger life was, having mentors, and these nonprofits that did that work was monumental and made such a difference in my life. And so I think that we need to make sure that we're looking at places like Department of Human Services, foster care, and then also incarcerated youth. And ISA2 mentioned, let's look at the programs that we're funding right now. And I think that that would be very helpful for finding youth in the rural areas. Yeah, so really what we're asking for is like diversity when we're recruiting youth.
Excellent, excellent, great insight that you shared. And I wholeheartedly agree with everything that you all shared. And Maricela, I think that was a brilliant suggestion about rural youth, to make sure that we think outside of the metro area and outside of, is it the Willamette Valley? I'm a transplant, so I'm still learning thank you, Diana. From Portland down to Salem, maybe even Eugene, but the rest of the state, east of the Cascades, that we also, and one thing that I hope also is that we can try to engage and recruit tribal youth in some capacity to the council. And of course, as you summed up, Maricela, diversity. We know that the future is female, but we also want to make sure that we are equitable to our male counterparts, and we have them at the table as well. Right now, as our audience can see, our 4 youth members on our council are all young ladies, one of them not being present today, but we definitely hope to add a male perspective. Particularly, I would love to see adjudicated youth. I love the idea about rural youth, tribal youth, and, you know, African American young men or young women, Latinx, even Asian, Middle Eastern, Pacific Islander. Like, we definitely want to make sure that our council is as diverse as possible. So the thing that I gathered from our conversation is that you all think, absolutely, someone in the chat chimed in of the LGBTQIA plus community. Absolutely. And that was a private message. I appreciate you for bringing that to my attention. That was definitely not intentional oversight. So thank you very much for that refresher and reminder, 100%. And so one thing that I gathered from our conversation is that you all think that we should continue to have a youth committee within the Youth Development Council. Is that the consensus? That meets at least some cycle, not just as needed?
Yes, I think we all kind of agreed that some sort of a safe space and just, you know, to better understand how the council works. I just wanted to mention something really quick. So another way that we could engage to join the council is just through our existing networks. I have some connections with some Indigenous youth, and I think that you were saying that you would like to see some tribal youth, and I could really help with that. And I'm sure our other council members could have those connections through different programs as well.
Perfect. I think that we will definitely begin that process. So before I open the floor to our director, Brian Detman, is there anything that we haven't discussed that you all would like to discuss? And then after Brian gives the director's report and information about our upcoming retreat, I want you all to be thinking about what our next steps are. So right now I'm opening the floor for anything that is pressing that you would like to share, or any questions that you have, or any, you know, suggestions, recommendations that we haven't discussed, and then also start to formulate what you all think should be our next step as a youth committee. And of course, you know, when we discuss the planning retreat, we know that that will also present an opportunity for us to kind of develop a blueprint and a roadmap moving forward as well. So anything that hasn't been addressed yet that you all would like to discuss, or any questions that you have right now? Okay, Brian, you have been very quiet, and so I will turn the floor over to the Youth Development Division Director, Mr. Brian Detman.
Thank you. Thank you, Youth Committee. Hopefully y'all can hear me. Youth Committee members. Is my sound good?
We can hear you.
Really appreciate Maricela, Diana, Isatu. Just appreciate your making time in the midst of some, I don't know, some snowy, crazy weather and and demands of work and life. So we won't try to keep you unnecessarily long. We may go to 1 when it's all said and done, but really appreciate the input, the insight, the great ideas. This is invaluable, and having had a chance to have some conversations with you individually in the fall, these are ideas that I think connect really well with some of the things we're thinking about as we go into strategic planning. So my thing for y'all is, let's make sure that these ideas are part of that plan. I can tell you they will be, because you've said them today, but they bear repeating. And I don't want to make you like, say the same thing. Brian, we told you this in September. Now we're telling it to you in February. You can tell me, well, yes, and we'll have a bigger gathering of folks. And so, because these are just golden ideas and really critical feedback. And so I'm eager to make sure that we incorporate these ideas in our work and in our plan going forward. I do want to acknowledge and thank our guests for showing up today. We do appreciate questions in the chat, and we'll do our best to get to them. And then we'll have some time for public comment. Each person gets 2 minutes in public comment. And so we'll get to that. Also do appreciate that I did see one of our other council members, Jeff Parker, was on earlier. I think he had to jump off, but know that there's some familiar faces who are guests, and we appreciate that you're here and listening in and hearing the information. And again, we'll have space for public comment at the end. And again, if there are questions relevant to the things our committee members are saying, please go ahead and throw them in the chat. I'm gonna just quickly share my screen so I can share just a couple of things related to our strategic plan. Can everybody see that slide? Maybe just, okay, cool. So this is a recap in some respects for, I think, committee members, because they've seen this information at our last Youth Development Council meeting, but just wanted to put in front of folks the mission, vision, values, and beliefs that the council approved at the December 2020 meeting. I'm excited about this mission and vision going forward. And I also recognize, like, our charge is to turn these words into action, right? So they sound good. They say lots of different things. Our charge is to like make good on this. So, but this idea that Oregon youth have the opportunity to thrive and achieve their full potential, I think is resonant. And Sanji, that sort of that headline around nothing, oh, now I'm forgetting what it is. Nothing
about us without us.
So let's just keep that front and center. One of the things that I want to see each committee do is to come up with a clear purpose statement. And I think that, so I'll just, as a next step, I'll identify that as something that I think each committee should be thinking about. Like, and let's write it down. You just put it on a piece of paper. I don't know that every committee has a real clear purpose statement. And that phrase resonates with me as potentially a part of that clear purpose of the youth subcommittee. And I'll be honest, like, other subcommittees are lacking that same clear purpose for their subcommittee. So youth committee, you're not behind. We've got other subcommittees where I think if we can arrive at that will then help direct that kind of clear roadmap for each committee. So wanted to share with you this vision the mission, vision, values, and beliefs. And then this is from a PowerPoint that I've shared before, so I'm going to skip ahead to a couple of slides. So these they're proposed priorities. I think we've identified and landed in many ways on these. Once we complete the strategic plan, I think we'll call them just our strategic priorities. But I wanted to put these in front of the committee so that you could see them. And again, lots of words, maybe potentially too many, but I want to throw them up here so you all can see them. And many of the things that you all have just talked about are, I think, critical activities within each of these priorities. For example, priority 1, identify systemic problems, advance solutions, and support structural reforms. That's a lot of, well, trust me, we've tried many times to like refine and perfect this, but having an annual, or maybe it's biannual, I don't know, youth summit would be a critical activity of this priority. Help us identify systemic problems, identify solutions and innovations, right? And support reforms, right? Where we see, hey, this is a problem, here's how we can change it. So that to me, if you're like, well, give me an example. Y'all just named it a few minutes ago. Annual, biannual, biennial, whatever youth summit, to me would be a critical piece of this. Priority 2, promote policies, partnerships, and expand and leverage resources. I think I heard Maricela say this. We need to work in partnership with other agencies, with our tribal partners, tribal sovereign nations, excuse me. And so connecting with DHS and OYA to have youth from their existing groups to be a part of both a summit, but also to be recruited to the council. Boom, let's create and deepen partnerships with those system partners. We're doing some of that work right now. We're in conversations with DHS and, you know, attend various tribal government to government cluster meetings, but let's deepen those connections. Deltra, one of our guests here, identified in the chat, like, how do we connect with rural Oregon or partners in rural spaces? So let's deepen those connections to recruit young people. Achieve strategic outcomes through grant making and programs. This is really, I don't know if I have a specific idea from today's conversation, but you know, maybe the idea here is, how do we get more youth and younger folks involved with our grant making panels? That would be a great, I think, activity within this priority. Strengthen YDC communication awareness. I think talking about what this committee is up to, sharing some of the information that we're doing. This might just connect to when we do a youth summit, we should have a e-newsletter that goes on afterwards and says, here's what we did, or we record the thing and we share it. Like, I think as agencies, sometimes we get to the busy doing the work, but we forget to then talk about it and share it. So this is about talking and sharing the work that we're doing. And then this last one, more internal, right? A little more internal, but like within the council and within our staff. But this to me is the ideas around clear onboarding for council members, particularly youth members, that orientation and preparation for meetings with our youth committee members. So those are, for me, real clear activities that you've identified today that fit within each of these priorities. And so, and there are many more that I'm sure we'll come up with. But just to make this real, what I'd ask of y'all to do is to continue to think about these priorities and then what ideas you have that fit within those. And if they don't fit not easily or not, don't worry about that. Just, we want ideas that then we can put into our plan and our roadmap going forward. I'm going to take a pause. Are there any reactions or questions among our youth committee members to this priority list and some of the things I've said?
Not so far, Brian. It's Diana.
Thanks, Diana.
No questions here. It looks good.
All right, Maricela, appreciate it. So again, I'll say it, and Isatu, I know you're there too. Or at least I think, yeah, there I see you.
Yes.
But I'm not, because I'm cool. I'm since I have my screen shared, I can't like see everybody. But next step or key thing for y'all to just think about, and we can share this slide out, or this list of priorities out with after the meeting, so you all can just be thinking about other ideas for activities that you have. So the other thing that I think we're going to be talking about at the retreat is about, like, how do we measure success? Like what does success look like around each of these ideas or the activities that we determine? So that one, that's not an easy exercise. I'm going to advance a couple of, these are just some questions that that we are asking committees to be considering and thinking about. How do you measure success? What actions do we need to take to advance? So the actions, the things that I just kind of was listing off as, like, that I heard from y'all earlier today, those are actions. That this suggestions for structure. I mean, this is like, where does some of this work live? I think that saying that we're going to organize a youth summit is something that lives very naturally within the youth committee. And this conversation we've also just had about, like, should this committee be ad hoc and just meet as needed, or should it be regular? The YDC has several committees, and I'll be really frank, some are, I think, originally intended to be meeting like on a regular basis, but they've become kind of more ad hoc. I just want to be clear. I just want us to be like, these ones are meeting, whether it's monthly or quarterly or twice a year, and then as clear as we can be. And then these other ones are just going to meet when we have, as needed. We have a rules and bylaws committee coming up next week, because we're going to look at kind of our member terms and member leadership and recruitment stuff at the rules committee. But that committee doesn't need to meet all the time, but we kind of had it set up as a quarterly meeting and then ended up canceling past meetings. So we're thinking about structure is going to be something that we want to do in the retreat. And then, I don't know if you have other ideas for how we structure the retreat. We'll be getting a schedule out to you as soon as we can. I mean, the basics are that we have over 3 days in February time set aside for the retreat. So I think I've sent some emails out to individual committee members. I'm looking at my phone to make sure I have like the dates and don't get them wrong. But we have on the Tuesday, the 23rd, we're meeting from 1 to 4. On Wednesday, the 24th, from 9 to 12. And on Thursday, February 5th, from 1 to 4. So there are 3 days, about 3 hours each day set aside for the retreat. So youth committee, want to make sure you have those dates and times on your calendars. I understand with work and life that there may be some times when it may be challenging for you to attend, and other council members have the same stuff. So ideally, since we've talked about this date, I'd love to get as many of the council members there for the whole time, and understand that that's 9 hours of time that you may have something that you need to like check in and then come back. I get it. You need to manage, with all the demands that you have, but we'd love to see you. That first day, we'll spend some time kind of hearing from some presenters, and also spend a little time at the very beginning, just kind of to get to know council and staff. The second day, we have our own YDD staff sharing some information that I think council members will find really useful. And then on that third day, we'll actually dive a little bit more deeply into these priorities, and then some of the ideas for actions and measures of success are going to be really critical on that day. So that's what I got. I think there's some questions maybe in the chat. I'm going to try to look at it. Is there anything we should do in preparation? Well, I think the preparation, great question, Diana, is, and again, after today's meeting, we'll get you these slides, right, with the priorities. I just want you and need you to be thinking about, okay, given what I saw on this, sorry, given what I saw here, yeah, what ideas do I have to help make these things real? That is my primary ask. You don't need to prepare a particular thing, Diana. Like, you don't need to come with a with a ready-made, you know, set of ideas. I just come as you are. But now that I've shared these priorities, and having shared them in December as well, I want you to have given them as much thought as you can. I think part of the reason we wanted to meet today was so that we could get some of your ideas on the table, which you've done beautifully. And so I would say bring those ideas, and let's make sure we can get them into that, particularly on that third day. Diana, does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for asking. That was, I think, the general report for me. We are going to be talking, we're going in front of the legislature for a Ways and Means presentation on our agency budget well, it was looking like it was going to be in late February, but I think the date may have gotten pushed out a little. So, you know, we're presenting our agency budget for the next biennium. At least from what the governor is recommending, our YDD budget looks strong. But again, the legislature is the body that actually approves budgets across state agencies. So, you know, that's what I'm spending time thinking about in addition to this retreat. And I would, committee, if there are any other questions. And Sanji, that's it from me. 20 minutes. I think we're a little on the early side.
We are, which is, you know, my colleagues and teammates know that I'm the tortoise. Slow and steady wins the race, but I'm so proud that we are actually moving ahead of schedule. Thank you so much, Brian. I think that it's amazing that the young ladies were already in tune with many of the things that you and the strategic planning committee have started to plan. I think there's a question in the chat about the retreat. Is that a public meeting, the retreat, or is that just for the members of the? So
thank you, Sanji. I'm glad you brought that. So this is a good point to make, both regarding our retreat. Anytime there is more than one council member together, it is a public meeting. In fact, even emails that include more than one council member are considered kind of public gatherings. So I think this point was made earlier about, hey, how can we bring our youth committee members together in, say, more informal and critically and safe spaces. I think that we can, and sorry for this little tangent, I will get to the retreat in just a sec, but those are public meetings. If whether we have a lunch or we do it needs to be public, and so we got to figure out, we can't do those things at least in by not following the public meeting laws that we have. So if there's a specific, like, yeah, going to DC for a conference, or if there's a specific training, we're going to do ethics training, and hey, committee members, y'all should come to that. If we're doing an orientation, that Sanji, let's you and I double check what and Melissa, if you're maybe Melissa, Sanji, I don't want to take you down that path, but we should double check. Like if we have an orientation or an onboarding, is that a public meeting? I don't know, but I will probably assume yes. Anytime a council member is together with another or more, it's public. So regarding the retreat, you all can probably then arrive at the answer to the question, which is those are public meetings. So we will notice them appropriately. The time will be spent on these specific agenda items, and then our responsibility is to make space for public comment. No more than 2 minutes per attendee, and we will do that. And I think based like today and other subcommittee meetings that I've been a part of, when we get questions in the chat, when we get comments from our public, many of whom are grantees and or interested parties, that makes us better and stronger. So you're welcome to attend.
Perfect. So our retreat is currently scheduled for 3 days, beginning on Tuesday, February 23rd. That time is 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. The next day is Wednesday, February 24th, 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. and Thursday, February 25th, 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. That is the retreat schedule. And those will be made as public notices, as was this meeting and all Youth Development Council meetings and committee meetings. So what's next? One thing that I was thinking about as Brian was talking, and as I asked you all to think about what's next, the main thing that came to my mind was social media. And I know that for young adults, young people, one of the main avenues and channels of communication that they use 23 hours of their life is social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, YouTube. I'm probably missing something, Snapchat. So I think that I would like for you all to contemplate how possibly the young adults of the Youth Development Council can have a footprint that reaches youth of Oregon through social media. So I'm going to put that on your mind. I would also like to remind you all, as Brian was talking about committees, that in addition to being on this committee, you also have another committee assignment, each of you. And our staff members who facilitate and liaison those committees are potentially going to be reaching out to you. And of course, we know that at the retreat, it's possible that your current committee assignment change, or you may have the opportunity to join a different committee outside of the youth committee. But as it currently stands, Destiny is on the Workforce and Reengagement Committee. Maricela is on the Administrative and Rules Committee. Excuse my tongue-tiedness there. Diana is on the Strategic Planning Committee, and Isatu is on the Juvenile Justice Committee. So I'll repeat that just for your information so you can jot that down. Destiny is on the Workforce and Reengagement Committee. Maricela is on the Administrative and Rules Committee. Diana is on the Strategic Planning Committee, and Isatu is on the Juvenile Justice Committee. And so for the staff liaisons and the chairs of those committees, we've kind of encouraged them to reach out to you. Sorry, I'm trying to get my screen back here. We've encouraged them to reach out to you so that they can begin to engage you and have your voice amplified in the committee work that they do outside of the youth committee. And again, that may change, or you may decide you want to work on a different committee, but that's how it currently stands. So I will continue to communicate with my colleagues and teammates on the Youth Development Division who staff those committees to make sure that they have your contact information, and be on the lookout, the listen out, the email watch for communication from them, or possibly each of those committee chairs. And so we decided that we want to keep the youth committee. And so we currently have a set schedule of quarterly meetings. And this next quarterly meeting for the youth committee was planned already for Friday, May 11th. The same time scheduled from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. We still have a little time to determine if this is the best time slot for you all to meet, the best day, the best cycle. But you should, when the calendar was sent, it was sent as a recurring quarterly meeting. It seems like on the second Friday from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. So look back in your emails for this meeting, should have that recurrence from Lindsay Schoonover, our JCP administrative specialist. But I will also make sure that she updates that, and you all can communicate with me, and I will be in touch with you either by text or email to determine if this recurrence is what you want to continue as. And please feel free to chime in right now if you have any immediate thoughts about if this cycle is one that is foreseeable. I know 3 months from now is a long time, but if you think that a Friday mid-morning, early afternoon works for your schedule, what do y'all think so far? One Friday every 3 months.
This day and time slot works perfectly for me.
Okay.
Sorry, what time are you proposing, Sanji?
Right now it's currently scheduled for the second Friday, I believe, of each 3 months. So the next one is scheduled for May 11th. The same time, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m.
Yeah, works for me.
Perfect. And I will reach out to Destiny. I've been on leave this week up until yesterday, so I wasn't able to follow up with you, but Lindsay sent out a reminder, I think a week or two ago, about this meeting. And I did communicate with some of you about if you all were still able to meet. And I know Brian also communicated with you all about if you were still able to meet. So as it stands, it's noted that our next meeting is scheduled to remain Friday, May 11th from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. So what are our next steps? Let's put together at least one measurable action item, and potentially more. I will leave it to you all's comfort zone about what we will discuss in our next meeting.
Just really quickly, Brian, you said that you would like to see purpose statements from each of the subcommittees. Is there a deadline for that? Or, yeah, I would deadline, so.
No, Marisa, I appreciate the question, and again, I'm gonna let's be sensitive to time. Generally speaking, like we'd love to get to that public comment and get people out. But in short, myself, I think as a part of the retreat, we can determine a deadline for that. So like no hard, heavy pressure on this subcommittee or others. Probably, you know, in that May timeframe would be a good, that would be a good topic for that conversation, for that meeting.
Thank you.
So I will give you all a homework assignment. Since we have all loved the idea of possibly revisiting a youth summit, I just ask that you all jot down some brainstorming thoughts and ideas and kind of refresh your memory of from a year ago, literally, about some of the topics that we discussed. Or how would you envision a youth summit in a world that is impacted by a pandemic? That's your homework assignment. How would you, and you have to forgive me, I used to be in the classroom, so it's charge it to my heart and not my head. It's not literally a homework assignment, but I would ask that you all would please consider how would you envision a youth summit in a world that's impacted by a pandemic. And is there any homework for me that you all would like for me to have? I see Isa too. No homework for me? I'm loving it.
Sorry, I was waiting for Isa too, but just a suggestion. I know you had talked about the mentorship between some of the council members and the youth. And I'm just wondering if we can maybe create a timeline and see which council members want to participate. That would be really great and helpful.
Perfect. Brilliant. Way to go, Chair Maricela. That's an awesome assignment. I will definitely begin that conversation. So I will have that report back to you, possibly at the retreat, but most certainly at the May meeting. So that's all I have. Young ladies, is there anything else that you all would like to share before we open it up for public comment?
Sorry, I just have one more question. I know we're talking about recruiting new council members. Is there a time frame for that as well, or will that be shared during the retreat?
I think that's a conversation that we can dwell more into at the retreat, and it's something that as we learn about appointments, reappointments, sunsets of current appointments, we will have a better gauge of how many potential new young adult council members we are trying to recruit and have appointed. So I believe there may be space for that at the retreat. And if not, definitely we can put an agenda item for the next meeting to have a more in-depth discussion about that. And I have all of the things that you shared today about potential recruitment avenues, and we will definitely start to explore those.
Yeah, and I'll just quickly add, I think Sanji's right. Part of the retreat, we have a March council meeting. So we'll, I think with the rules and nominations committee having had a meeting sometime next week, as I said, we'll, I think, be able to bring a little clearer picture, more likely at the council meeting in March, or at least just like a quick piece. I imagine though, we'll be in a 3 to 6 month recruitment time frame, Maricela, just like, because I don't want to like rush that. And I'll say this real quick, please be thinking about potential youth younger youth committee members, but we will have positions on the council, so that are just, you know, other people's whose terms have termed, whose terms have come to an end, blah blah blah. So you are council members, and your input and suggestions around other people who just your people you know in the community will be welcome.
Perfect. Anything else before we open the meeting to public comment? We welcome, and Brian has already done that formally, all of our guests, and thank you all for joining today, and allow you the space to share or ask any questions that you would like to at this time. I guess we can try to do the raise your hand feature and acknowledge each person one at a time, if there's anyone who would like to have a comment at this time from the public.
Deltra, I was going to acknowledge Deltra Ferguson's note in the chat earlier. Do you want me to just read that, Deltra, or do you want to chime in?
I can chime in. Thank you. Mine was that my name's Deltra Ferguson. I'm from Resolve Center for Dispute Resolution and Restorative Justice. We work out of Southern Oregon, and we work with youth using the practice of restorative justice, and we work in school settings, and we also work in good to hear from the youth voices. I appreciate it so much. You're so smart, and it's just good to hear your intelligence. And my only comment is that I would like to understand the recruiting process. I think that I can be of assistance by identifying some youth in our community that could be part of it, and that will add the rural voice to, and the rural perspective to your it's sure things are different here in Southern Oregon, and in some interesting ways, our beautiful people too. So they need to be part of this and have a voice here. It is a white dominant culture in Southern Oregon, and you probably know that, but it is changing. Powerful, is growing, and is increasingly vocal and part of what makes our community good. You are here and always need, as we are everywhere, and the need a voice. I just hope that you will consider letting me know what's going on. I'll do the best I can to get some kids to be part of your committee. Yeah, thank you.
I assume your email is in the chat, right? So we captured that, and I assume, Deltra, you're signed up for like some of our regular communication, you know, you get notices, but I thank you, and we've got your information, so we will. I'm interested in us being like more communicative about like, hey, we are adding new members to our council, so we'll need to do some thinking about what that process looks like, but look out for that. Look out for any information and or gatherings to that effect.
Thank you very much, Deltra and Brian, for the information in response to her comment. Is there anyone else who would like to share public comment at this time?
Hello, my name is Nick Mathern. I wasn't actually planning to make a public comment today, but I will just say I've been listening to the meeting just because I wanted to hear how the work is coming. And I just want to provide my congratulations and admiration to the youth members of the committee. I represent an organization called Achieving the Dream. We support community colleges across the country, and we're always doing what we can to lift up the voices of young people. And so I was curious how that was working here with the YDC. And clearly you've got some dynamic young leaders who are making a difference. And I just want to acknowledge your time and your contribution, and recognize your leadership, and thank you for your leadership on behalf of young people in the state.
Thank you, Nick. Thanks for being here too.
Excellent. Thank you so much for your comment and for such a well-deserved praise of our young people and the amazing journeys and accomplishments and successes that they have.
I know that Zainab, you raised your hand, so it was raised. You raised it. I saw it. There it is.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
And yes, I appreciate also Nick Mathern's comments about this committee. This is my first time attending. My name is Zainab Folk. My pronouns is she and her, and I actually volunteer and executive director with Kukatanen in Oregon. And one of the things why I wanted to attend this particular meeting was because I wanted to learn more about how we can get our youth more involved. And so I saw Deltra's comment, and I was waiting for the actual answer, as well as, what are the guidelines and criteria? When I saw your slide, it was speaking more towards what YDD does when it comes to working with youth from ages 6 to 24, but I didn't, based on the demographics currently on the committee, the youth committee, it didn't seem like, I'm just trying to see how young is too young. And do you ever think about a peer-to-peer type of mentorship? So those of you who are sitting on the committee, helping those who are younger than you come up to understand how they can also eventually or continue to be engaged on the way that you are. So I would really love to hear that from the committee members. And like Nick said, I'm just so excited just to hear your voices and all your thoughts. And while I'm hoping to be able to be at the strategic plan, just to be like, again, just to hear, what the conversation is, I'm just excited to know that that's happening, and also about the Youth Summit itself too. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing, Zainab. We definitely appreciate the praise, and what an excellent idea to have these brilliant, amazing young people mentoring people who have had similar journeys or who are on their path to greatness. Love it, love it, love it. I wrote it down.
Sanji, can I jump? I think Zainab has identified a key action or next step that we need to have and this, Melissa, maybe something like this already exists, clear kind of, I don't know, definition of council membership, probably something listing each of our committees once we get those purpose statements from them. But Zainab, I'm just saying back to you what I think I heard you say, which is like, what does that makeup look like? What is too young? So we, full disclosure, something like that probably exists on paper. I'm guessing it's probably a few years old, and we need to do some updating. So if you would please, allow us to kind of develop or refine what exists. But that's an action item for us, which we will take on and make an assignment around, and then either at the next youth committee or as we have these committee meetings, I think that's an action that we need to take and we will take.
Absolutely. And as I explained earlier, we also double as the state advisory group for our Title II grant formula grant program, and there are specific criteria and designations of who has to be a part of a state advisory group. And so in addition to serving as the Oregon Youth Development Council, we are also the Oregon State Advisory Group for our Title II funds. And there are clear definitions of who can be, as far as the minimum age, that is definitely something that we need to clarify. And as Brian stated, we will make sure to have that information ready. And so one thing that you all noticed is that I was facilitating this meeting, and I did that because it was the first time that in a while that there has been a youth member. And Melissa's letting me know that James Jones would like to make a comment. So I will let you go, Mr. Jones, before I make my next statement.
Thank you for that. And I apologize for having my camera off for the duration of the meeting. I was bouncing between two meetings, but my name is James Jones. I'm the Community Engagement Coordinator for Our Children Oregon. And first, I want to like to thank you all for the invitation to this meeting, to this committee meeting. A lot of great information. We are also in a unique position trying to figure out the most effective way to convene youth, to rally the youth together and create something. So I really appreciate the information that was given. And I look forward to hopefully doing some more work with you all and building something, a program or a system that can be used, transferable, and all around the state, So again, thank you for that.
Thank you very much, James. What is the name of your organization again?
Our Children Oregon.
Our Children Oregon.
Yes.
If I Google that, I'll find the website, or would you like to give me your email address in the chat?
Yes, I can do both for you, actually.
Perfect. Are there any other, sorry, my screen is compact, so I'm not able to see all those who have raised their hand. Are there any other public comments? Thank you all so much for such kind and gracious comments, informative comments, things that we need to take action on and consider. We greatly appreciate you all for joining us today. One thing that I was about to share is that typically the chair of the committee is the facilitator and presides over the meeting. And so just as an introductory this time, I was kind of spearheading and facilitating a little bit, but next time I will be doing less talking and our chair, Maricela, will be doing more talking. So I'd like to thank you all for the opportunity to kind of coordinate and facilitate the conversation today. Thank you all for your wonderful, wonderful engagement, and both our committee members, our public, we greatly appreciate the response and the participation today. And so now I am going to allow our chair to do the final steps and adjourn our meeting. Just a reminder, we do now know that we will continue in the current cycle and reoccurrence, and our next meeting is scheduled for Friday, May 11th from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. And I will turn it over to our chair, Maricela.
These are the logistics we were talking about. But yeah, our meeting is adjourned. If nobody else has questions, otherwise, please speak up. We have 8 more minutes.
Is there a website or you guys talked about a Facebook? I know you talked about it, Sanji, that you want to have. I'm just wanting to know, how can we connect or keep connected with the youth committee itself? Thank you.
Right now, that was kind of a something for the ladies to continue to brainstorm about. The Oregon Youth Development Council and Division has a website that you can get more information about our council and our the work that the Youth Development Division does on their behalf. And that is Oregon Youth Development Council.org. And thank you so much, Melissa, for putting that in the chat. And please sign up for our mailings. You can do that on the website, because we will be changing over to a new website soon. And so this current website is still active and functioning. And when that new website is launched and goes live, it will redirect you to the new website. And thank you, Zenab, for putting your contact information in the chat. I'm going to screenshot that right now. And I turn it back over to Maricela.
All right, does anybody have any final questions? All right, thank you guys so much for your time, and enjoy the snow. Take care.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Stay safe, be well, take care.
Thank you.